find this on our resume. There's no participation trophy, no LinkedIn badge, no certification you can plop on your profile that says, "Congratulations, you're now breaking generational trauma." But there's a whole generation of millennials out here doing this silent, legacy-shaping work that nobody sees. And today, we're celebrating it. Because somehow, we're out here breaking cycles, healing family systems, redefining what success even means, all while also keeping a sourdough starter we've named Brad alive. So yeah, we're doing a lot. Because millennials didn't just inherit student loan debt and lower back pain. We inherited patterns, unspoken rules, survival strategies that got passed down like family heirlooms. And the wildest part is, most of these patterns were never questioned by our parents or grandparents. They just became normal. Normal to not talk about feelings. Normal to keep the peace at the expense of your own well-being. Normal to earn love through achievement and treat stress like ambition. Normal to pretend like everything is fine while quietly unraveling. But that's what makes our generation different. We're not just the first ones to recognize these patterns. Instead of calling them normal, we're calling them what they actually are. Cycles of emotional avoidance and people-pleasing and the constant need to prove yourself. Cycles that didn't start with us, but absolutely landed on us. We grew up in an emotional culture that said, suck it up. And we became adults in a world that finally started saying, that might actually be trauma. Because unlike generations before us, we have more access to language and education and awareness, which means we have something no generation before us really had. A choice to keep the pattern going or break it. We truly are the bridge generation. So that's what today's episode of the Millennial Reset is all about. The cycle breakers and sourdough bakers, the millennial legacy. We're unpacking the invisible generational labor that so many of us are doing in our own homes, reparenting ourselves, healing trauma, and rewriting the script so that future generations don't have to carry what we did. First of all, we're going to break down the cycles that went unchecked for generations before us. Okay, not to blame or shame anyone, but to finally see them clearly for what they are. Okay, second, we're going to talk about why millennials are the ones waking up to it, what we've lived through, what we watched collapse, what we were promised versus what we actually got, and how all of that cracked the old story wide open. And third, we're getting practical. Okay, because cycle breaking isn't always some dramatic movie style moment. Most of the time, it's everyday decisions. It's the version where you set one boundary and feel guilty for 3 days, where you don't respond to the toxic group chat, where you stop pushing through and start resting before you earn it, where you stop shrinking yourself just to keep other people comfortable. And the craziest part of it all is that we're doing this in real time while showing up for work, showing up for family, showing up in a world that's still unraveling. So again, let's take a moment to celebrate that. If you're new here, hey, I'm Peter, your millennial mindset mentor and burnout bestie, and I'm here to remind you who the fuck you are. A 90s kid at heart, and now somehow a fully functioning adult that's doing the brutal inner work of breaking generational curses. Not just for you, but for those that come after you. So if you've ever wondered why this journey feels so lonely, heavy, or even invisible, today's episode is a reminder. You might not even see the outcome of what you're doing in your lifetime, because the work that you've decided to shoulder, even as exhausted as you might be, is going to have a ripple effect for generations to come. So whether you are parenting your kids, your parents, or reparenting yourself, or all three, this one's for you. Let's celebrate the legacy you are creating. Welcome to the Millennial Reset, a soft landing for your messy middle, a space for our generation to do the real work of unlearning and rebuilding, for the ones choosing rest over rush, peace over pressure, and alignment over achievement. Because the comeback and the reset isn't about becoming someone better. It's about remembering who you were before the world told you who to be. I'm glad you're here. All right, so let's start here, because before we can break the cycle, we have to actually see the cycle for what it is. And when you look back at what we watched growing up, it's kind of wild how much of it was normalized. Like, we didn't grow up thinking, wow, this is a dysfunctional system. We grew up thinking this is just adulthood. This is just what families are like. This is what work is like. This is what being a responsible adult looks like. And again, let me reiterate, this isn't about blaming our parents or turning this into a whole, who screwed us up episode. Most of what got passed down wasn't intentional. It was survival. It was coping. It was, this is what I had to do to make it. But survival strategies, when they get passed down as values, become cycles. And a lot of the cycles we inherited weren't loud and dramatic. They were subtle. They were baked into the way that we were raised. We didn't just inherit the cycles, we inherited the consequences. But that's what makes millennials different. Because cycles don't get questioned until they stop working. And millennials are the first generation to collectively hit that wall. We grew up watching our parents push through everything. The message was clear in what we saw modeled, right? Suck it up, smile through it, and, don't ask for help. You add in a little bit of unhealed trauma, rigid gender roles, grind culture, and the emotional norm of we don't talk about that. And it was like a shaken up bottle of repressed stress and undealt with emotions being passed down. And then we became the adults in the room and realized, this ain't it. This isn't just exhausting for us. It's unhealthy for everyone around us too. Our partners, our friends, our kids, even the family members still stuck inside the old cycle. That pressure in that soda bottle wasn't just uncomfortable, it was unsustainable. And at some point, whether you said it out loud or not, something in you decided, this ends with me. Even if you didn't know what came next. Not because we're weaker than generations before us, but because we've been asked to carry more pressure with less support in a world moving faster than the human nervous system was ever built for. So we unscrewed the bottle. And the moment we did, everything we grew up calling normal started showing its true cost. So let's break it down here, right? Let's name what the old cycles were and what I call the switch flips. How our generation is not only breaking those cycles, but creating new ones. So first up is the cycle of emotional avoidance. We grew up in an era where emotions were treated like something that you either ignored, stuffed down, laughed off, or prayed away. Emotional avoidance was equated with comfort. Emotions weren't something that you processed. You weren't taught what to do with feelings. You were taught how to move past them, right? Stop crying. Don't be dramatic. Other people have it worse. Shake it off. You're fine. It's fine. Everything's fine. Which sounds harmless, right? Until you're in your 30s and realizing that you have no idea how to process disappointment without turning it into anxiety and shoulder tension. Emotional avoidance didn't just go away, it became louder. Because when you don't process emotions, you store them. And what you suppress doesn't disappear. It shows up as anxiety, irritability, chronic stress, numbness, panic, that disconnected, I don't even know what I feel feeling. But as we grew up, we started learning a truth that no one taught us. Feelings aren't weakness. They're signals, a sign that informs us that we need to tune into something. And ignoring the signal doesn't make you stronger. It just makes the signal louder. And, they say that trauma gets passed down until someone is willing to feel it and heal it. So instead of shoving it under the rug, we're learning to sit with discomfort long enough to release it. We stopped calling emotions too much and started treating them like information. And it's that flip of the switch, the creating of that new cycle, that creates more calm, more clarity, more connection. And when kids grow up in homes where emotions are safe, they don't have to turn their feelings into symptoms just to be heard. So instead of shoving it down to avoid the discomfort, we're breaking that cycle of emotional avoidance by becoming the ones to feel it so that we can heal it. All right, let's move on to the next cycle. This one was a big one for us millennials, okay? The cycle that says achievement equals love and worth. A lot of us weren't told directly that we had to earn love, but we could feel it. The more productive you were, the more impressive you were, the more good you were, the safer you felt. So we chased it. We climbed the ladder. We got the job. We bought the stuff. We hit the milestones. The subconscious lesson became, if I perform well, I'm worthy. And if I fail, I'm a problem. So we learned to chase those gold stars like they were oxygen. Good grades, good behavior, good athlete, good kid. And then that turned into good employee, good partner, good parent, good at everything you do, and always stay busy becoming even better. And then somewhere, maybe in your 30s, we looked around and thought, wait, why do I still feel like I'm not enough? And it's almost laughable now looking back. Like, we were really out here thinking the goal was to build a life so perfect that we didn't actually have time to actually live it. Because if your identity is built on achievement, you never get to rest. You never get to just be. You're always proving. And that's when we realized we weren't chasing success. We were chasing approval. We were trying to earn our worth through productivity. And once you see that, you can't unsee it. So now we're breaking that cycle too, and we're replacing it with a new one. The flip of the switch, so to speak, became rest is a right, not a reward. Worth isn't earned, it's inherent. You stop living in prove it mode and you start living in I'm already enough mode. And the generations that come after us can begin to know that love isn't conditional based on performance. They learn that they're worthy just because they exist. Instead of waiting to feel worthy until you've built a life of enough accomplishments, we're breaking that cycle of achievement equals love and living our lives as human beings instead of human doings. All right, so let's move on to cycle number 3. This one was painfully normalized. It didn't even register as a problem. The cycle that says that self-abandonment equals responsibility. Right? Growing up, we watch adults that were constantly stressed, constantly busy, constantly sacrificing. And we were taught that was what it meant to be responsible. You don't rest, you don't have needs, you don't say no, you just keep going. Like if you weren't chronically tired, you weren't trying hard enough. And burning yourself out was the badge of honor that you were doing life correctly. And the reward was more going. Overworking became an entire identity. Because as long as you sacrifice your needs now, then you could be happier later in life when you retire. Then you can finally enjoy yourself again. In the meantime, hold it all together, even if it costs you yourself. We became the ones who could handle anything, dependable, over-deliverers, the yes ma'am, yes sir generation. But then life got heavy. Work got louder. Technology erased boundaries. Economic pressure increased. And we realized again, probably somewhere in your 30s, I don't want that life. I don't want to spend my adulthood running on fumes just to reach retirement, if that's even a thing anymore, too exhausted to actually enjoy it. Because self-abandonment isn't responsibility. It's a slow leak of your life force. So we stopped. We stopped sacrificing ourselves to prove we're capable and started choosing ourselves to stay alive. And a lot of us realize something too, I think, that we're not just parenting differently, we're reparenting ourselves. Going back to rescue that version of us that got left behind and living our lives now instead of abandoning ourselves. Doing more of what we really want to do instead of what others expect of us. And that is also the moment that you get your energy back. You get your health back. You get your life back. And the next generation learns a different definition of responsibility. One that includes prioritizing your own needs, taking water breaks in the marathon called life instead of powering through to reach a finish line that just keeps moving anyways. Breaking the cycle of responsibility equals self-abandonment, and creating the new cycle that responsibility really equals self-preservation. Okay? And now for the last cycle, the one that I would argue to say caused the most trauma. The cycle that says conflict is dangerous, right? So many of us grew up in households where conflict meant one of two things. Either it was explosive or it was avoided completely. We learned that disagreement wasn't normal. It was a threat. Conflict patterns didn't protect relationships. They broke them. We watch what happened with either our own parents or maybe our friends' parents. Divorces, addictions, breakdowns, resentment and anger that simmered beneath the surface. So we adapted. We tiptoed, we people-pleased, we swallowed feelings to keep the peace. We either avoided confrontation entirely or we over-explained our boundaries like we're defending a dissertation. And then we wondered why we felt resentful, why relationships felt draining, why we didn't feel seen. Because keeping the peace often meant losing ourselves. And at some point in time, we realized, I don't want love that requires silence. I don't want peace that costs me my voice. So we started learning a new truth, creating a new pattern interrupt. That healthy conflict is a skill, not a threat. That repair is possible, that boundaries are healthy, and honesty doesn't have to be cruel to be real. And from that new cycle, you get deeper relationships, cleaner communication, less resentment, more trust, and kids raised around self-conflict learn something pretty revolutionary. That love doesn't disappear when things get uncomfortable. So those are the 4 big cycles. And here's the reason all this matters, right? Because when these cycles go unchecked, they don't disappear. They get passed down. And the danger isn't just that they repeat, it's that they compound. The patterns get stronger and harder to break. Emotional avoidance turns into disconnection. Achievement addiction turns into burnout. Self-abandonment turns into resentment. And avoiding conflict turns into people-pleasing. And seeing the pattern is the first step to breaking it. Because once you can name the cycle, you can interrupt it. Which is why we're flipping the switch with these cycles. Okay, not because it's trendy or cute, but because we don't want our kids inheriting survival mode as normal. We don't want love to feel conditional. We don't want success to require self-abandonment. We want a different legacy. And that legacy doesn't start with one big dramatic moment. It starts with small interruptions, everyday choices, new defaults, which is what we're going to get into next here. Okay, how do we make this a habit? And as far as I'm concerned, I think there's a pretty simple way of thinking about it. Pause before you default. That's it. That's the power move. Okay, because again, cycle breaking isn't one big dramatic decision. It's a series of tiny interruptions that add up to a different life. So, the next time that you feel yourself about to slide into the old cycle, just hit the pause button. One breath, one moment, and you name the old pattern, like literally call it out to yourself. This is the old cycle. This is survival mode. And in that brief pause that exists between the situation and your reaction, you choose the new cycle. Ask yourself, what would the more healed version of me do next? Okay, not the perfect version, not the fully regulated monk version, just the version of you who's 10% more aware than you were yesterday. And that is where that emotional avoidance becomes emotional presence. When you feel something uncomfortable and you immediately notice that urge to distract or numb or shut down or talk yourself out of it, the pattern interrupt sounds like, okay, I'm feeling something and I don't need to fix it. I just need to feel it. So instead of scrolling, you sit there for 60 seconds and notice what's happening. Instead of saying, I'm fine, you say, I'm fucking overwhelmed. Instead of stuffing it down, you name it out loud. This is sadness. This is anxiety. This is anger. Because feelings that get felt get released. And the more you practice this, the safer emotions become. Not just for you, but for everyone around you. And moving on to that achievement equals worth cycle. That becomes rest equals a right. When you feel that sense of guilt for needing rest, that pattern interrupt sounds like, my worth is not something I prove. Rest isn't a reward, it's a right. So instead of that one more task on your to-do list, you stop at a reasonable time. Instead of pushing through exhaustion, you take a break before you crash. And yeah, guilt's probably going to show up. That's not a sign that you're doing it wrong. That's just the old programming throwing a tantrum on its way out. Because when you normalize rest, you teach your nervous system safety. And you model a completely different definition of success for yourself and those that come after you. And going back to that self-abandonment cycle, that becomes a self-honoring cycle. When you're noticing that you're neglecting yourself for a false sense of security, when you're tempted to say yes when you mean no, or over-deliver, or put everyone else first, you just pause. And the pattern interrupt sounds like, old me would abandon myself to be accepted. The new me sticks up for myself. Instead of instantly agreeing, you say, let me think about that. Instead of being the fixer, you let people handle their own damn emotions. And instead of being low maintenance, you ask for what you need. Okay, because self-honoring isn't selfish, it's self first. Okay, and last but not least, that cycle of conflict is dangerous becomes conflict is a skill. When you feel yourself slipping into the old cycle of avoiding hard conversations until resentment builds up, you hit the pause button. The pattern interrupt sounds something like, this is a safe moment to be honest. I can be direct and kind. Instead of ghosting or withdrawing, you speak up calmly. Instead of people-pleasing, you set that boundary. And instead of over-explaining, you say it in one sentence. Hey, that doesn't work for me. I'm not available for that. I need a minute before we continue. Because healthy conflict creates healthy relationships. It teaches repair. It teaches trust. It teaches you and those that come after you that discomfort doesn't have to mean danger. Okay, so every single one of these flips comes back to the same thing. Pause, name the old pattern, choose the new response. It's not about perfection here, it's about interruption. One small, brave moment at a time. So, before we wrap this up, I just want to take a second and say this, if no one has told you today, I see you. Okay, I see you, because this work, it ain't flashy. You don't get a trophy for setting a boundary with your mom. And nobody throws you a parade for choosing rest instead of resentment. Okay, but make no mistake, this is legacy work. You are doing the quiet thing that shifts an entire family lineage. And I know, sometimes cycle breaking feels like you're taking the hits now so someone else gets the piece later. So let's reiterate what's in it for you. Because yes, there are some short-term payoffs, like more energy because you stop leaking it everywhere. Like, let's say less anxiety and more peace because your nervous system isn't on red alert 24/7, and you stop chasing worth like it's something outside of you, right? Better relationships because you stop people pleasing and you start being real. More self-trust because you finally start keeping promises to yourself, and less resentment because your needs aren't constantly getting ignored. But the long-term payoff, that's where it gets really powerful. Because even if you don't see the full impact in your lifetime, you are literally rewriting what normal looks like for everyone that comes after you. Kids who don't grow up thinking that love is conditional. Families that can actually talk about hard things. Relationships where honesty doesn't feel unsafe. And homes where rest doesn't include guilt. Where success doesn't require self-abandonment. Okay, you're not just changing your habits. You're literally changing the course of humanity. This is the ancestral, epigenetic work of not just healing for you, but healing with and for the generations before and after you. The cycles, it didn't start with us, but breaking them does. So if all you do this week is pause once, choose a boundary once, feel your feelings instead of numbing, rest before you've earned it, that's you flipping the switch. You are the cycle breaker, sourdough baker. You're the bridge. You're the glitch in the matrix. So take a deep breath and give yourself credit for doing what so many people never even get the chance to do. Because when we look back at this in another 40 years, you're going to realize something that you might even not know right now. That you didn't break yourself. You broke the cycle. And this new pattern, this new chapter of society starts with you. All right. I love you all. I'm proud of you for being here. Don't forget to check out the Millennial Support Community Club Chrysalis. You can learn more about that and how to sign up to be a part of this amazing space where we'll continue this conversation on www.themillennialreset.com. And I will see you on the next one.